She walked away with nothing, then built an empire. Chapter 1. The door. She closed behind her. At 6:17 on a rainy Tuesday morning, Amara stood outside the apartment she had once called home. She had one suitcase, one handbag, and a phone with a cracked screen, and exactly enough money in her account to buy breakfast and, perhaps, a bus ticket. She stared at the door for several seconds. Behind it was everything she had spent 8 years building: a marriage, a business, a beautiful home, a life she had defended to everyone who warned her that something wasn't right. But there was one thing she no longer had. Her husband, not because he had died, and not because they had divorced peacefully. He had simply chosen another life. Worse, he had chosen to take almost everything with him. Amara had spent years helping him build a future. Now she was standing outside that future with nothing but a suitcase. Her younger sister, Nia, was waiting downstairs. When Amara got into the car, Nia looked at her. "Where are we going?" Amara swallowed. "I don't know." Nia reached over and held her hand. "Then we'll figure it out." Amara watched through the window as the apartment disappeared behind them. She expected to feel broken. Instead, strangely, she felt quiet. She didn't know it yet, but that morning was not the end of her story. It was the first page. Chapter 2, starting from a borrowed room. Nia's apartment was small, very small. There was barely enough space for 2 people, and the sofa became Amara's bed. The first night, she couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling until 3 in the morning, her mind replaying the same questions. How had she gotten here? How could 8 years disappear so quickly? What was she supposed to tell people? The next morning, Nia made tea. "You need a job." Amara almost laughed. "I had a company." "You had his company." The words hurt because they were true. Amara had been responsible for the company's operations, its customer relationships, its product development. But she had never demanded ownership. She had trusted her husband. That mistake had cost her everything. So she started applying for jobs: marketing assistant, sales manager, operations officer, anything. 3 weeks passed, then 4. Most companies rejected her. One interviewer told her she was overqualified. Another asked why she had been out of the formal job market for so long. Amara wanted to scream. Instead, she smiled. Family responsibilities. Eventually, she found temporary work at a small grocery shop. The pay was modest, the hours long, but she accepted. For the first time in years, she wasn't working to maintain somebody else's dream. She was working simply to survive. And survival, she discovered, could be strangely motivating. Chapter 3. The idea nobody took seriously. One evening, Amara came home exhausted, having noticed something at work. Customers constantly complained about small businesses that couldn't deliver their products efficiently. A woman selling handmade soap couldn't afford professional delivery services. A young man selling cakes online struggled to get orders to customers on time. A clothing designer had lost customers because deliveries were unreliable. Amara began writing notes. Then, more notes. Soon, her notebook was full. She had an idea: a simple delivery and logistics service designed specifically for small businesses. Nia listened as Amara explained it. "So, you're starting another company?" Amara shook her head. "No, I'm starting something of my own." Nia smiled. "What's the difference?" "This time, nobody can tell me it's theirs." The first version of the business was nothing glamorous. No fancy office, no employees, no expensive website. Amara used her phone. She created a simple social media page, then approached small businesses one by one. Her first customer sold cakes. The second sold clothes. The third sold handmade skincare products. Her first week's revenue was so small, she almost cried. Not because it was disappointing, but because it was hers. Every coin represented something she had created without someone else's permission. Chapter 4. The First Failure. 6 months later, Amara made her first major mistake. She accepted more orders than she could handle. Deliveries were late, customers complained. 2 businesses stopped using her service. Then a popular customer posted a negative review. Amara stared at the screen for hours, wanting to quit. Instead, she called every customer personally. She apologized. She refunded several payments. Then she sat down and studied what had gone wrong. The problem wasn't demand. The problem was her system. She had been trying to do everything herself. So she hired 2 motorcycle couriers. She created delivery zones. She introduced order tracking. For the first time, Amara stopped thinking like someone trying to survive and started thinking like a business owner. That failure changed everything. Success hadn't taught her nearly as much as losing those customers did. Chapter 5. The Woman from Her Past. 2 years after leaving her marriage, Amara attended a business conference. She wasn't expecting to see him, but there he was, David, her former husband, standing near the stage, surrounded by executives. His company had grown. He looked successful. For a moment, Amara felt that old ache. Then someone approached her. "Amara?" She turned. It was one of the women who had worked with David's company. "I've heard about your company," the woman said. Amara smiled politely. "Really? It's growing incredibly fast." Amara glanced across the room. David had seen her. Their eyes met. He looked surprised. Perhaps he had expected her to disappear. Perhaps he thought the woman who left with 1 suitcase would spend the rest of her life regretting it. But Amara wasn't the woman who had walked through that door 2 years earlier. She had learned how to stand alone. And she had learned something even more important. She didn't need him to acknowledge her success. Chapter 6. When everyone wanted a piece. Business exploded. Small businesses began recommending Amara's company, then larger companies noticed. Investors called, banks offered loans. People who had ignored her emails suddenly wanted meetings. One investor offered a large sum for a significant percentage of the company. Amara almost accepted. Then she remembered the apartment door. She remembered what it felt like to build something she didn't legally own. She declined. Her advisors thought she was crazy, but Amara had learned the difference between money and control. She wanted growth, but she wanted ownership too. So instead of surrendering a large piece of the company, she grew slowly. It wasn't easy. There were months when payroll was frightening, nights when she wondered whether she had made the wrong decision. But the company kept growing, and eventually something happened that she never expected. Her company became bigger than the one she had once helped build with David. Chapter 7. The Price of Success. Success didn't make Amara's life perfect. It just made some problems different. Employees depended on her, customers expected results. Competitors copied her ideas. One former employee even attempted to steal customer information. Amara had to learn leadership the hard way. She made mistakes. She trusted the wrong people. She sometimes became so focused on work that she forgot to call Nia. One evening, Nia confronted her. "You spent years escaping one life," she said. "Don't build another prison." The words stopped Amara cold. That night, she looked around her enormous office. Everything was beautiful. Everything was successful. But she suddenly realized that she had been trying so hard to prove she didn't need anyone that she had forgotten she was allowed to need people. She changed her schedule. She began taking weekends off. She reconnected with friends. She visited her mother more often. For the first time, success began to feel like freedom rather than revenge. Chapter 8. The Crisis. Then came the worst year. The economy slowed. Several major clients canceled contracts. Fuel costs increased. Operational expenses soared. Within months, revenue dropped dramatically. Amara had employees with families. People depended on their salaries. She couldn't simply walk away. One morning, she sat alone in her office with financial reports spread across the desk. The numbers were frightening. She had two choices: close several branches and fire dozens of people, or risk everything to keep the company alive. She chose a painful middle path. She reduced her own salary first, then executive expenses, then unnecessary costs. She met with employees personally. She didn't make promises she couldn't keep. Instead, she told them the truth. "We're going through a difficult season, but I'm going to fight for this company." And she did. For 8 months, some people left, some stayed, but slowly the company recovered. The crisis didn't make Amara richer. It made her stronger. Chapter 9. The Empire. 5 years after leaving that apartment, Amara stood on a stage in front of hundreds of people. Her company had expanded into several countries. Thousands of small businesses used its services. Young entrepreneurs depended on its platform. The woman who once had one suitcase now had an entire organization behind her. Reporters wanted to know her secret. "How did you build an empire?" Amara smiled. "I didn't." The interviewer looked confused. "What do you mean?" "I built it one bad day at a time." The audience laughed, but Amara continued. "There was no magical morning when everything changed. There were mornings when I was terrified. There were nights when I wanted to quit. There were mistakes. There were people who doubted me. There were people I trusted who disappointed me." She paused. "But I kept showing up." The audience went silent. That was the part nobody saw. The empire had been built long before anyone noticed it. Chapter 10. The Invitation. A few months later, Amara received an unexpected invitation. David was getting married. The card arrived at her office, and for a few seconds she simply stared at it. Nia was sitting nearby. "You don't have to go." "I know." "Then don't." Amara smiled. "I think I will." The wedding was elegant. David looked happy. Amara didn't feel jealous. That surprised her. Years earlier, she had imagined this moment differently. She had imagined proving something. Instead, she discovered she had nothing to prove. David approached her during the reception. "You've done incredibly well," he said. "Thank you. I didn't think you'd, survive?" He looked down. "I was going to say succeed." Amara smiled. "I learned something after we separated." "What?" "Sometimes losing the life you planned is the beginning of finding the life you actually want." David didn't know what to say. For once, Amara didn't need him to. She walked away, not because she hated him, but because she had finally stopped carrying him with her. Chapter 11. What she did with her success. Amara could have bought anything: a mansion, luxury cars, private holidays. Instead, she started something unexpected, a foundation for women who had lost financial independence after divorce, family breakdown, or business failure. The foundation provided training, mentorship, small business grants, and, most importantly, practical financial education. At the first launch event, a young woman stood up. "I came here thinking I had nothing." Amara smiled. "So did I." The woman looked surprised. "You?" Amara nodded. "I once owned almost nothing but a suitcase and a cracked phone." The room went quiet. "And today?" Amara looked around. "Today, I know that having nothing is not the same as being nothing." The applause came slowly, then louder. Amara looked toward the back of the room. Nia was standing there, smiling. Amara smiled back. That moment meant more to her than any business award because she finally understood what her journey had been about. It wasn't about becoming powerful. It was about becoming free. Chapter 12. She walked away with nothing. Years later, Amara returned to the apartment building where everything had started. It looked smaller than she remembered. She stood outside for a moment and could almost see the younger version of herself. The woman with one suitcase. The woman who thought her life was over. The woman who couldn't imagine surviving the next month. Amara smiled. She didn't feel ashamed of that woman anymore. She felt grateful for her because she had kept going. She had learned, she had failed, she had started again, she had built something nobody could take from her. And perhaps that was the greatest victory. Not the company, not the money, not the awards, not the empire, but knowing that if everything disappeared tomorrow, she would still know how to begin again. Amara picked up her handbag and walked toward her car. She didn't look back, because sometimes the most powerful chapter of your life begins the moment you walk away from the one you thought you couldn't live without. She had walked away with nothing. But she had discovered something nobody could take from her, herself. And from that, she built an empire.